Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming by for another episode of the Ben Werman podcast. I'm extremely excited today to have with me Teresa O, a helper of the Proper Human Diet. I believe it's a coaching program kind of deal with Ken Berry. Maybe you could talk about that at some point, but super excited to have you here. You have an awesome story, and I'm so happy to share it with the world.
Thank you.
So, why don't we start with the thing that really put you on my radar, which is your story of diet. Because I think you had a very similar start to a lot of people and also a lot of women to how you sort of found your way into certain ways of eating. And you later figured out, maybe this isn't the best. So I think it started like in your 20s, right? Could you start there and maybe fill us in?
Yeah, so in my 20s, I started having children. And the first two was pretty normal. You gain a little weight during pregnancy, but after you have a baby, then it starts to come off. And so everything was normal, minor complaints. By my third child, I was 26. And I gained a lot of weight with that pregnancy, and the baby weight did not come off. And that's really what started a lot of my problems. My cycles were off. I was slowly gaining weight. Fatigue started to seep in and just wasn't feeling all that great. So I started looking into, different diets, I guess, or ways of eating. I really wasn't interested in a diet exactly because, as soon as you get off of a diet, you go back to gaining the weight and everything resumes. So I was really looking for a way to eat forever. Um, I tried everything from paleo to the blood type diet to Mediterranean. It got to a point where I was like, okay, let's try calorie restriction and see what happens. No, you're starving all the time. Um, you know, move more, eat less kind of thing. It just gave me more of a headache than anything, and nothing was really working. And I was kind of discouraged because I was still young. At this point, I'm in my early 30s, so I really shouldn't be having issues, but they just kept creeping up. Um, I think for a while I kind of gave up, so I was just eating, I wouldn't say really crappy, but not the best. So we would have fast food and, eat a lot of the stuff that you find in the packages at the store. But I think it was in 2014, I was 38. I lost my gallbladder. I had an acute attack, and they did an ultrasound, and there was a huge stone like right in the duct. So there was no way this thing was going to come out. It was blocked, and it had to come out. Um, I obviously had a lot of questions because I was in the emergency room when it happened, and one of those questions was, can I function without a gallbladder? They said, yeah, you'll be fine. It's just something that stores your bile. Your liver will still make bile, but you can live without a gallbladder. And I was like, okay, well, I need any supplements um, following the removal. And they said, no, not at all. The liver will slowly drip bile into your stomach, so there's nothing that you need to worry about. So I was like, okay. And it kind of put me at ease going into the surgery. So not shortly after, I mean, I recovered pretty quick, but not shortly after I started having issues. And the main issue was constipation. And we're not talking not using the bathroom for a period of time. We're talking backed up to the point where I was in pain so badly that I was mostly in the fetal position on the couch, kind of constipation. And no matter what I did, it really didn't help. Like I think I took Senna a couple of times and might get some momentary relief, but then it would just come back again. And I wasn't shying away from fat because, well, I didn't have a gallbladder, so I wasn't really worried about fat anymore.
So this is still sort of the standard American diet phase where you haven't really gone super deep into exploring diets yet.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Um,
So you're
well,
getting
nothing
close to
serious
needing
anymore.
answers, and that's when that next phase began.
Yeah, nothing serious as far as diets. Like the diets I told you about earlier, that's what I had tried up until now. So this was kind of like, I'm kind of sick of looking for the answers phase. So
Right.
yeah, I was just eating standard American diet. Um, so yeah, nothing was really helping the constipation and it was just getting worse and I was miserable. So the first year I was going through this and I also gained 60 pounds in 1 year. So 60 pounds on top of, I don't even remember what my weight was. So just more weight.
It all kind
I
of blends
started,
together, I can assume, after a while. You because you're not wanting to think about it as it's happening. So you're not looking at the scale. You're trying to ignore that. So I'm sure it doesn't
right,
leave like a clear
yeah,
memory.
right. And so I got online and I was like, I can't do another day of this. Something has to give here. And I researched and I came across this forum of people or this community that had, gallbladder removal or they were having gallbladder issues. And I started seeing digestive enzyme as you need to take a digestive enzyme. And I was like, what is that? So I started searching for that. And I guess the best place for me at the time was Amazon because you can search these products and then you can read all the reviews and see other people's experiences. So I settled on super enzymes by now. And within 2 days, I did not suffer from constipation ever again. And I was like, oh my God, this is wonderful. And yeah, so okay, that was fixed. However, I was not losing the weight. My cycles were still horrible. And my fatigue during the day was getting pretty bad. So I couldn't go a day without taking a nap. And being in your early 30s, it's like, well, you know, I always associated naps with like old people. Sorry, old people. But so I
And
figured I
college
was,
kids who are
yeah,
hungover after class.
right. So I thought I was too young for that too. And it had been several years since my gallbladder removal. And I was like, well, I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life. Maybe we should really get serious about cleaning up our eating. And my husband agreed because he was having fatigue issues. And we saw What the Health on Netflix. And then after we watched What the Health, my husband found The Game Changers and we fell for it and started eating 100% whole food plant-based diet.
So you're
For the
around
first,
40 at this time, right? Is this like 40s yet or still late 30s?
I was 45 at this point.
45. Okay.
Wait, no. 43, sorry.
43. Okay. So 43
Yeah,
is when this happened.
yeah. 43 is the magic number. Um, I will say that before any of this occurred, I had never eaten a vegetable in my life.
Really? That's an interesting
Yes.
twist.
I had potatoes, I had grains, and corn, but never a green vegetable, ever. I hated them and I never touched them. So starches and grains, that's about the extent of my plant consumption. They tasted horrible. I did have fruit. I forgot about that. I did mix the green drinks with fruit. That was the only way I was able to ingest green vegetables, but I was determined. I've always been determined. And I did whatever I had to do to get those vegetables down. And for 30 days, I felt okay. I was detoxing from the processed junk, the sugar, stuff like that. And my energy improved just a little bit. I think it was a couple of months in, I just felt normal. Like it went back to normal. 6 months in, I noticed some things cropping up. I started getting postnasal drip. I started getting phlegm in my throat that wouldn't go away. My ears were popping, so it sounded like I had fluid in there. I started getting dandruff, seborrheic dermatitis, which is basically my forehead just constantly peeled. So I was always flaking skin off of my forehead. I started getting dermatitis everywhere. My arms were dry, my legs were dry, my feet were dry. And I was a little confused about that because I wasn't whole food, plant-based, low fat. I ate my chia seeds. I had avocados in all of my food. I used olive oil when I cooked. I wasn't worried about fat at all. So the dry skin and everything was a little confusing. My hair started to thin. My cycles got worse. My fatigue got worse. My carpal tunnel, which hadn't bothered me since I was 19 years old, started coming back. Let's see. My joints started to seize up, and I later found out that was the start of rheumatoid arthritis. I started getting this ache in my legs, and then eventually it was my entire body. And then the ache turned into pain and stiffness, and it was 24/7. The only way to get relief was to pop Motrin. I think I did 600 to 800 milligrams every 4 hours for I don't even know how long. Longer than is recommended, longer than should be helpful, healthy. But I had no choice. If I wanted to function at all, I had to take it. My sleep got really bad. I had horrible cramps in my legs. That's what would wake me up. Of course, I didn't know anything about magnesium back then. And now that I think about it, my salt intake was probably very low. I had a counter half full of supplements. I mean, we're talking bottles and bottles. Every time something new would crop up, I would be in the vegan and plant-based communities asking, why is this occurring? What can I do for it? And of course, they would give you a natural plant-based alternative or remedy. So yeah, a lot of wasted money on supplements that did absolutely nothing. I started getting the same thing that Kelly Hogan had. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it was reoccurring boils, which would make it very painful to sit down sometimes, painful to walk. Uh, I also started getting plantar fasciitis, which was weird because I never had problems with my feet. I also chalked that up to maybe because at this point I had gained another 40 pounds. Eating plants, by the way, eating plants, gained another 40 pounds. So I thought, well, maybe my weight is too heavy for my feet and something's going on in my feet. But no, I later learned that that's autoimmune as well. And yeah. So I go from having like maybe a messed up cycle to some fatigue to now, I don't know, 3 or 4 autoimmune conditions, poor sleep, bad skin, thinning hair. And I'm still going, what is going on? This is supposed to be the most healthiest diet ever. At least that's what they say. So I go back to the vegan and plant-based communities. Oh, well, you just need a detox. There's something going on in your body. You need to do a complete detox. Just go 100% raw. Don't cook anything. Just go raw. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know any better. So maybe I should listen to the people who've been doing it for years. No. I went raw the last 6 months and my health deteriorated very quickly. I noticed that I was getting shortness of breath just sitting. I could no longer carry grocery bags. I used to be a person, and maybe it's a bit lazy, but I used to grab as many grocery bags in my hands as I could possibly carry because I didn't want to make 10 trips back to the car to go get all the groceries. So, I mean, we're talking like loaded arms full of grocery bags to bring them all in. It was kind of a game I played with myself, how many can I get it all in one trip? And I did pretty good. But at this point, I could carry a bag of bread and maybe something else light, like maybe I had some clothes or something. I could never carry more than 2. My fingers would hurt, my carpal tunnel would hurt, and I really didn't have the strength in my arm.
So this is now 1 year in, right? So the first 6 months was like standard vegan, and then the 6 months of raw vegan.
Yeah.
So you're about a
So
year
the
in at
first,
this point.
yeah. So the first 6 months was raw, like, the green drinks and cooked food. I actually made a really delicious vegan fettuccine alfredo. It was really good. And my kids asked for that constantly. The crazy thing about it was it took like an hour and a half to make because in order to make the sauce taste anything edible, you you had to add a lot of like garlic and other seasonings and stuff to make it palatable, but they loved it. Um and then the last 6 months was completely raw. They said, no, you gotta dump all of that other stuff. Don't cook anything, just eat it raw.
So that's only fruit and vegetables just straight from the produce rack, pretty much.
And seeds. Like I
Okay.
used chia seeds, flax seeds. I did eat cashews
Mm.
and sunflower seeds, stuff like that to make sure I was getting my fats in. And I kind of I kind of missed the beans because at least with beans I had uh, more protein coming in. But they said no, no, can't have anything cooked. So I was like, shit. Okay. Um, it was miserable because I was drinking water and a lot of green drinks because I couldn't I couldn't eat green vegetables. I just couldn't eat it. The only way I could have it was through the green drinks. So I drank way too many of those.
Which was like a mix with fruit, right? Fruit and greens.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. And do I remember you said something about your teeth also? Like you had
My
like a
teeth?
tooth problem from the raw side, right?
Oh yeah. Three and a half of my teeth just crumbled and
Jeez,
broke right out of my mouth.
that's crazy.
So there's one.
Just from eating plants. That's
Just from
wild.
eating plants. No sugary garbage. I never cheated. I am a very disciplined person. And if I did allow myself a treat, it was like once a month and it was a vegan cupcake. But at this point, I was probably so deficient in magnesium and iron that I craved that chocolate. So that's why I allowed myself the chocolate vegan cupcake because my body was starving. So
And the supplements weren't doing it because, I mean, that's such a crazy idea that the vegans have is that if you just manage an entire shelf of these supplements, you can plug all the holes that are, in your diet. But first of all, like they're at the same time talking about how this is like an ancestral way of living somehow. But obviously, ancestor did not have supplements, so that's right
no,
away that's a fallacy. And also, they are not bioavailable at all, which means that
no,
your body cannot use these nutrients at all, or it very much less than the actual sources, which we know is in meat. So these supplements are just, it's like a very ineffective band-aid at best. It really doesn't get you those nutrients, period.
no. And I was really worried about my B12 because that's what they talk about a lot. And it was a big topic in the community. So I took double what they recommended to supplement B12 with. And I, when I had blood work done shortly after starting carnivore, I was deficient in B12. So if I'm taking double what they suggest and I'm still deficient, maybe my time was limited. I mean, it was just a matter of time before I had a stroke or something, you know? So that really scared me.
And you
I was
probably
like,
were
okay,
thinking like, "Oh, I'm just getting old, and this is like natural. This has like I'm just falling apart because I'm getting old, right?" Like I hear that over and over again.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's that's exactly what I thought because I'm in my mid 40s at this point and wow, is this as good as it gets? Am I just going to keep deteriorating as I age? Because I don't know if I can make it to my 80s if this keeps going the way it was going. My brain function suffered really bad after going raw. I have books all over the house. I love to read books. I can finish a decent sized book in 2 days, three tops. And once I start reading, it's really hard to get me away from it. But at this point, I couldn't get past a paragraph. And I would get really distracted. I noticed that I wasn't comprehending what I was reading and so I would have to go back and read the paragraph again. And that really started to bother me because my brain has always function normally. I never really had to worry about that. And this was really scaring me. Um,
Even
I,
when your physical body was sort of like felt like it was running away from you, you at least had the mental side you could hang on to. So I can
yeah,
imagine even when you lost that, it really started eating away at you.
yeah. I
Hmm.
was I was getting really worried. I started getting depressed during the raw phase, and I experienced anxiety for the first time in my life. And at the time, I did not know it was anxiety. All I know is that I just had this feeling like I couldn't explain it. I would go to sleep at night and second guess, did I lock the door? And it would bother me so bad that I would get out of bed and then go to all the doors and make sure that they were locked again. My two daughters, they're my oldest children, they moved out, left the nest, and I was so worried about them. And that we live in Arizona, it's a gun state, so I was just like, okay, make sure you have access to your gun at all times, don't answer the door, blah blah blah. And I was just freaking out all the time, wondering, are my girls safe? Are they going to be okay on their own? My husband saw that my anxiety was horrible, and he goes, well, there's this app called Life 360, and we can all get on the app, and then that way we're okay, if that would make you feel better. I was like, yeah, I think that would make me feel a little bit better. So we're all on 360, and now I can safely say on carnivore, I don't have that anxiety anymore, but it was
It
really
sounds like there's
bad.
even some shades of OCD in there too, like needing to check the door over and over. That's like a classic sign of that. I mean, I don't know if that was ever diagnosed, but
No,
that's a
never
very common one
diagnosed,
I
but
hear. Hmm.
yeah, never diagnosed, but it was definitely suspect. Yeah.
The whole mental cloud is so hard to like clearly define. Like all you knew is that things were starting to go haywire and you couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
Essentially,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. That's crazy. Man, that must have been a crazy year. I can only imagine like what that felt like, what it was like for your family, and just so at this point you're probably getting desperate, I can assume. You're looking for answers. What'd you find?
Um, well, I will say that I was concerned, but I wasn't desperate yet.
Okay.
So the end of one whole year, we got 2 months left. And this is where I really got scared.
Mm.
So I started having worse than usual bloating. And it was getting like, you have regular bloating and it's not that bad. It's just slightly uncomfortable. And if you wait 20 to 30 minutes, it's going to go down. It's no big deal. So this bloating was like out of hand. And over the next 2 months, it would get really bad. And then the last straw was for about a week, every time I ate, within 2 to 5 minutes, I would have the most extreme stomach cramping that I have ever experienced. Mind you, I've had 3 babies and have passed 2 kidney stones. So when I say that this stomach cramping was intense, I'm not being dramatic here. Obviously, it wasn't as bad as giving birth or anything like that, but it was pretty painful. And it would occur every time I ate. And an even bigger problem was because I only ate plants, even though I did include fat in that, I was hungry all the time and I had to eat all the time. So enduring that pain that many times a day I had had enough. And it didn't stop there because I would have discomfort and pain during the digestion process. And elimination could go either way. It could be constipation or it could be diarrhea. It was a toss up. I really didn't know what I was going to get. So to go from extreme pain just from eating all the way into the digestion process, I had had enough. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't. My periods were horrific. I was sleeping 7.5 to 8 hours a night and taking 2 to 3 hour naps during the day. I never felt rested. I never had any kind of energy. I had problems breathing. I had problems thinking. I had pain from head to toe 24/7. There wasn't a part of my body that didn't have something wrong with it. And to not have even a fraction of these issues before starting plant-based, I was like, I'm never eating another plant again. And I'll never forget this day. And I've said it in other interviews. I declared we are eating at Denny's, and I had a slam burger, and it was delicious. And yeah,
You brought
technically,
I think you brought your daughter into it, right? You're like, you brought the family together. We're eating Denny's today.
no, it was the whole family. The whole
Okay.
family was in a room. And I was like on the verge of tears because I was hungry, but I didn't want the pain. But then I was just like, you know what? I just won't eat plants. So I ordered the slam burger. No lettuce, no tomatoes. There was nothing like that on there. I was not touching that. So yeah, give me the hash browns, the egg, the burger patty, the bacon I think was on it, and yeah, I went to town on that thing and I finished it. And yeah, I had some discomfort, but it really wasn't that bad. And I was willing to live with it because my body was like, "Oh my God, yes, this is what I needed. I needed the meat." So it was after that I was binging the Why I'm No Longer Vegan videos that I found Dr. Berry, and yeah, sucked my daughter into the carnivore diet. We haven't looked back since.
That's Dr. Ken Berry for everyone listening. I'm going to throw that in the show notes because he's a legend.
Yeah,
He's a man. I love his videos.
100%.
And when you were going through those videos, so at this point you had the big burger full of meat, and like, did you already start? I mean, did you go straight to the videos right after that very first burger, or did you start like incorporating meat more gradually and then start diving in?
Um, so Denny's started like a 2-week period of SAD, standard American diet. I ate whatever I wanted. I did not touch a vegetable. You couldn't pay me to touch a vegetable. It wasn't happening. I started looking for stuff about what I was going through. Like, I think I Googled, issues with the plant diet or problems that can come up with not eating meat and stuff like that. And it in the search results, I got a video from YouTube titled "Why I'm No Longer Vegan." So I watched that and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's pretty much everything I went through." And on the sidebar, of course, they have suggestions for more videos that are like that. So I started just clicking on them one after another, just horrified that all of these people, mostly women, were having all of these issues, some similar to mine, some even worse than mine. And I'm just horrified. It's like, oh my God, what would have happened had I kept going? And I don't even like to think about that anymore because it can't be anything good. And it
Maybe if you
was, I
just
think about,
veganed harder, right?
oh,
You're doing it
I
wrong.
thought being raw was vegan harder and that didn't work. So we're not going to go there. And how do you even vegan harder? Just double the plants that you were eating? Because I mean, that probably would have exploded my stomach. So that's not happening. But yeah, 2 weeks into watching these horrifying videos, a different kind of video popped up. in the suggestions, and it was Dr. Berry. At this point, I'm eating like whatever I want. Eggs, toaster strudels, bacon, just random stuff, whatever I feel like eating. And so I start watching his video. And my daughter, because we were plant-based for 14 months, was in the kitchen making a strawberry cake. Yes. So she was in there baking. So I watched the video and I'm just like, what? What is this? And I was like, really? I watched
This is
another
just to be
video.
clear for listeners. What is the video about? Essentially, talking about carnivore, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, or eating low carb. I believe the first video I clicked on was a carnivore one. And my first impression was, what? I love meat. Okay. So you have my attention, and I watched another one, which I think was just, basically low carb and talking about, issues that you have that would benefit from a low carb diet. So yeah, I got really into his videos. My daughter's cake was finished. She let it cool. She iced it. And really, we had like a piece this big. It was huge. And we enjoyed every bit of that cake because, no sugar for over a year and feeling like crap. Yeah, we pigged out. And it was after that that I listened to one of his videos, and I can't remember what it was called or what specifically he was talking about, but it was something big for me. And I just stopped. And I was like, oh my, I'm going to do this. And I looked over at my daughter and I was like, you want to do something crazy? And she said, sure. And I was like, let's go carnivore. She's like, okay. That was almost 2 years ago.
That's amazing. It must have been so fantastic to just have a family that's on board with you, because I know that, just having people around you that you can do it with makes it so much better. That's the way that I did it as well. I had my good buddy and I did it together. And when you both are just on your own separate but also conjoined journey of making yourself healthier, it's just super exciting to be able to bounce things off each other, and just it builds so much excitement around it and confidence around it. And you can like help each other, through different issues, because sometimes there's a transition period where certain things happen that aren't great. And didn't you went cold turkey, right? So what happened from there? You went 100% in, like only like just 100% carnivore, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Did you go with the Ken Berry style?
No, I ate all the meats.
Okay, so
So I
just
ate
meat.
chicken, I ate seafood, I ate cheese. In the beginning, I had some cheese. But yeah, if it was an animal, I ate it.
Awesome. So what did you start seeing to happen after that? What was the how did your body react to that very large change?
Well, I had disaster pants, which most people experience when
Classic.
they change their diet.
I,
But
I did too.
right,
I
but
even had a bunch of meat before that. So like I was having meat and fruit for a while and I still had it. So like taking out that last little bit sometimes, even for people, is what still gets you.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I didn't have any fruit, so it was all meat and eggs and cheese. And honestly, I did not care because by I'd say a day and a half, something like 36 hours, 48 at the most, I had zero pain when I ate. Like zero. There was no bloating, there was no stomach cramping, there was nothing except for satiety, which I hadn't experienced in a long time. So I, at that point, really didn't care if I had diarrhea for the rest of my life. I could eat without pain and I felt better. So I didn't care.
trade-offs, and I'm sure that went away. Obviously, for most people, it goes away after a couple of weeks. For me, it was like actually a little bit longer than that, but it goes away. Your gut microbiome is just not used to this.
Yeah.
If you've been feeding it plant toxins for months or years, it changes and it stops being. I'm terrible at the science part. Maybe you are too. This is where we need Ken Berry on speed dial. But like it's just not built to digest fat anymore. It kind of loses that ability after a while. You need to train it back to be able to do that, which is its preferred state, to be able to digest protein and fat and not be bombarded by these plant toxins and anti-nutrients 24/7. So that's why
Right.
there's that period of change. And it's cool for you though, since you already had a terrible time before, like your gut was crying for help. So the second
Yeah.
that you just threw meat at it, it was like, yes, this is what I needed.
Yeah.
And all of a
And my
sudden it could
brain woke
digest
up too.
properly. Yeah. So you had like a mental function come back too. Tell me about that.
Oh, it was fantastic. And well, before I get into the brain thing, I will add that if you have a gallbladder, yeah, it won't take you long to get used to the diet. I didn't have a gallbladder, so it took me about 6 to 7 months. Um, but I can say that I can eat straight up butter and not have a problem anymore. My liver has adjusted to my fat consumption, so no more issues. But yeah, my brain just woke up. I was suddenly looking around and things seemed clearer. I could think more clearly. I wasn't all over the place. I hadn't attempted reading yet because I was already kind of frustrated and disappointed with what was going on with my brain on the plant diet. So books were set aside, but I did notice other things. Um, Within a month, my anxiety was gone. It only took like 3 to 4 weeks. Uh, the depression took a little bit longer. I think it took probably about 8 to 10 weeks. Um,
Still miraculously short time for people who are stuck under that cloud. Like when they hear that, they're like, oh, that's like instantly.
yeah. And I don't remember the day. I probably put it down in my journal, but I was sitting right here and I was looking outside and I saw the hummingbird, a hummingbird come to the hummingbird feeder that's right outside the door. And I just smiled. And I was like, oh my God. It's like one of those smiles that you can feel with your whole body. And I was just all like, oh, okay, whoa. That was huge. And I hadn't remembered feeling like that or smiling like that in a very long time. And it was after that I just would catch myself smiling for no reason. So I was like, okay, I don't care what happens. All the supermarkets could be like out of meat. We live in Arizona. We live in Tucson. So I was like, I will go out into the wash and I will hunt down a desert jackrabbit if I have to, but I am not stopping meat. And so, I mean, it was a very profound feeling, and I could not ignore that.
Yeah, I mean, your body gave you the clearest signals it possibly can. And the mental one is huge because there's so many people that are dealing with that. And it's such a sinister issue because the brain fog itself is stopping them from really seeing what's going on, which is just that they are meat deficient. They're not getting fat because your brain is 70%, 60%, I think it's 70% fat. And it needs that to function. Those are the
Yeah.
building blocks it needs in order to function. So when people go on these low fat or even zero fat diets, zero animal fat diets, they're not giving their brain anything it can use. They're just filling it again, like same as the gut, you're just giving it plant toxins and anti-nutrients that are making things worse. And
Yeah.
this is why when people completely cut that out, I've never once heard a story of someone going from plant-based to meat-based or carnivore and not experiencing a significant increase in just their mental well-being. And I've never struggled with bad depression or anxiety or any problems that really made me seek help, but I felt a huge upgrade after I just cut out the last few fruit and vegetables and just went all meat and eggs. I My focus has just become superhuman level. I can grind all day on work, loving it, just like happy. Like work, like my family was like concerned about me. Like, Ben, you're working too much. You're like doing this all day. And I'm like, yeah, I love it. I feel great about what I'm doing. Like I'm doing productive things, and like I'm happy about it. And I'm not
Right.
tired. Like when everyone else is out taking naps, like you said, and taking breaks, and going back to get more carbs, because when you're on carbs, you're constantly on the clock when you're eating carbs because they're
Yeah.
not satiating you. You need to keep refilling constantly. And when you don't have to do that, it's just so freeing. And well, it's just why it's so backwards when people think this is a restrictive diet. Because, I mean, going through what you've been through, do you think it's restrictive to only eat meat from your
No,
experience?
no. Um, True that I eat fewer food items than I did was when I was on the plant diet. I mean, in order to make plants taste, I wouldn't even call it good. To make them edible, you you have to use a lot of ingredients. So yeah, while the number of food items has gone down considerably since starting carnivore, I do not feel restricted or deprived in any way. And that is because my body is getting absolutely everything it needs. The only time I think that a person would feel restricted or anything like that is if they're not getting what they need. Uh, Most of my diet now is 95% beef, eggs, and butter. If my body needs anything that those three things can't provide well, then I go and eat that thing. And that's usually fish, or maybe it needs something in bacon because every once in a while I'll have a craving for bacon. Um, I've eaten clams, scallops, lobster, fish. Um, not a huge craving for pork, but it does happen every once in a while. Not a huge craving for chicken either, but it happens. But yeah, so I don't feel restricted at all,
The
ever.
only thing that, gun to my head, if someone was saying, what are you restricting yourself of? There has to be something. I would cite one of my favorites he's big in the Bitcoin world, but also carnivore, Safedina Moose. What he says, mouth entertainment is what you get from eating carbs and sugar. So you're restricting yourself from a few seconds of that food touching your taste buds and lighting up this dopamine in your brain. And the second it goes past your mouth and your throat, it's gone. And your
Right,
body is basically then suffering, and you're abusing your digestive system for a couple seconds of pleasure. And so
right,
that's what I think about anytime I'm craving fruit, because for me fruit was hard. I love my piles of mangoes and pineapple. I used to eat those like crazy. And so and then I learned, oh, it just breaks down into fructose. It's the same thing as a candy bar alcohol.
right,
That was one of the
right.
things that Ken Berry taught me, and I really appreciate him for that. And it's it's a tough one to swallow for people. And me too. It
It
took me a
is.
long time to really swallow that one because I loved fruit. It's I mean, ask yourself why it's so delicious, people. Why does it taste so dang sweet and tasty and you just can't stop eating it? Because it's all sugar. These
Yeah,
modern
exactly.
fruit are not natural. And actually, speaking of that point, I want to pull out something. I think this is your YouTube bio. I saved this because I loved what you wrote. Let me read it off real quick. You said, ancient foods do not cause modern disease. I think that statement has been forgotten in the last few decades, and I am guilty of eating those man made, chemical laden products called food. I suffered greatly. After switching to a whole food, plant based diet, I thought my health would get better, but it only got worse. It wasn't until I found carnivore and rapidly started healing my body that I realized even though plants are natural, It doesn't mean humans are meant to eat them. Key point. It's not what our ancestors ate, and plants played almost no role in our evolution. And honestly, are the plants we eat even natural anymore? And that's a big point right there. Are the plants we see natural? I bring that back every time people try to convince me that, fruit is amazing or vegetables are amazing. The things we're seeing in the supermarket right now are nowhere close to natural the way nature made them. Those are man made creations. And it's been going on for thousands of years since the agricultural revolution, where farmers started, well, you know, there was just a whole market around it all of a sudden when there hadn't been before. And so all the farmers started picking only the sweet ones and using those to seed their next crop. And they just kept cutting out all of the other ones and only keeping the biggest, juiciest, sweetest ones. And over, 10,000 years of that, we now have these gigantic sugar bombs we call fruit that are just giving people fatty liver and rotting their teeth. Like your example, your teeth literally cracked and fell out because you're eating so
Yep.
much fruit. And I don't think people are putting that together. They think that just because it comes out of the ground and it's natural, that it has to be good for you. But I who did I talk? I think I talked about this with Coach Stephen Thomas. He's another carnivore I love. How the plants themselves, they make the fruit sweet so things can eat them and move that seed around. So the vegetable part of the plant, like the leaves, those parts are just full of poison, oxalates, and stuff that like really tries to deter predators. So that's why the vegetables are bad for you. But the sweetness in the fruit doesn't mean it's good for you. It means they're trying to get things to eat it to move their seed around. They're basically using the things with legs to spread their seed. And the plant doesn't care about you. It's not trying to make you healthy. It's not trying to make you healthy. It's just using chemicals to its advantage to achieve its own ends. And I just think that is so amazing that we have been so duped by these plants. They have totally beat us mentally.
Yeah.
They're so much smarter than we are. They played us like a harp and we fell for it. And here we are.
Yeah.
We're still eating all of their plants and think it's amazing. It's like the plants just totally conquered humans. It's incredible.
It is. And they use their color to entice us, and they use chemicals for their aroma to entice us even more. And yeah, they're just playing us. They have nothing to offer. They're just using us to stay alive. And that's all there is to it.
Big kudos to plants, man. Well played. Well played is all I can say.
Right.
One of the things we haven't even talked about at all, since we're now at the transition part of your story, is the weight loss. Like that was the first
Yes.
thing that people see on the thumbnail of your old video is you lost a tremendous amount of weight for this. So could you kind of walk us
Yes.
through like where you were at the peak of the plant-based diet and what happened after that?
Yeah. So at the end of the plant-based diet, I felt completely destroyed. There, the list of things that were wrong with me had gone like 2 pages in my notebook already. Um, I could probably give you a list of things that wasn't wrong with me. That would be much shorter than going through the list of things that were. Yeah, so when I started carnivore, I really didn't care about my weight loss. I was at a point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I wasn't, oh, I'm going to start carnivore to lose my big butt. No. I just wanted to feel good. I wanted to feel healthy. I wanted to have energy, and I didn't want it to hurt every time I put something in my mouth. So I, for the first few weeks, literally woke up and only had just eat the meat and nothing else on my brain. I didn't focus on anything. I didn't want anything else. I just knew that I had to get through detox because I have gone through detox situations before, so I wasn't new to that. I knew what I was going up against. And I knew I had to avoid sugar, and all the other things that I had loved to eat. So I just stayed focused on just eat the meat, and then you don't have to worry about anything. And sure enough, every day got easier and easier. During detoxing, I had issues sleeping. I would wake up in the middle of the night. I felt really uncomfortable. Couple of times I just wanted to jump right out of my own skin, but I just kept reminding myself, just eat the meat. You're going to be okay. Um, I don't even think it, I don't even think it took 2 weeks. I woke up one morning and I instantly realized how alert I was. And I was ready to go.
And this time not in like an anxious, like negatively alert way, but like a sharp way.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It was fantastic. And when your fibromyalgia is so bad that it takes you 2 hours to wake up and, kind of unknot yourself and loosen up, to wake up and be instantly alert and nothing hurts and you don't need to wake up and there's no stiffness.
And that was likely from the B12 deficiency, right? I've heard that that is part of the reason why, it takes so long to get yourself sort of loosened up in the morning. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I do not know the science behind it. All I can tell you is that I ate the meat and the fat and it went away. So if you want the science, maybe ask Dr. Berry, ask Dr.
That's all
Chafee,
that matters.
possibly Dr. Baker. I don't.
I'm a big fan of anecdotal evidence here. That's become my new favorite
Right,
thing because the studies are so much of a mess.
right. And it was early on because in the beginning I was skeptical, but after these things started happening, I was like, okay, you have my attention now. I was like, I will do everything you say, which I did. I did everything, everything that Dr. Berry said. I ate when I was hungry and I ate until I was full. I ate fatty meat and eggs. And I think I started off with like flavored electrolytes in the beginning, but then I started noticing that it was becoming too sweet for me. And I I didn't have any adverse reactions from it, but I felt a little off in my stomach. So I switched to unflavored early on and I got used to it really quick. Now I can't handle anything sweet. It will make me sick. Um so yeah, I did everything he said. I did venture out to listen to some other influencers, but my brain was working so well that when I heard some of them, I was just all like, that's crazy. Get out of here. I'm not doing that. I am not eating sardines for 3 days. I'm sorry. No, you're not going to get me to do that. I'm not doing that.
You were able to like really think through your own decisions better, which is
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was getting better at listening to what my body really needed instead of what my brain was saying. Hey, no, you want the sugar. No, you don't. Shut up. So I was listening better to my body. And then when I heard outside influencers talk about things, it's like, I don't know if you've ever watched Police Academy.
I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
I, I'm not sure if it was the second movie or the third movie where she was saying that, you see this, Mahoney? It's a finely tuned crap detector. And so so yeah, early on in, I developed that. And so yeah. And every time Dr. Berry spoke, I didn't hear any crap.
Dr. Barry is such a straight shooter, and you can
Yeah.
tell that, especially if you've looked deeper into his videos, where he, I mean, he wasn't always carnivore. He's been on his own journey. He started off, I mean, he started originally as a doctor, just saying what all the other doctors were saying, which is low fat is best, meat isn't great, limit it. And he's been on a multi-year journey of starting from there, going to like a little bit of keto, I think, and then going full on carnivore. And now he's a full carnivore. He's as carnivore as it
Yeah.
gets. And that's that gives me so much respect for the guy because he is so transparent with his own learning. He's not pretending to be an expert in everything he says.
Right.
And he always backs things up much better than we can with like the data and actual science behind it because he has that type of brain that can do that. Him and Dr. Chafee, Anthony Chafee, are, in my opinion, the top of the mountain in terms of carnivore doctors. They do such a great job, and I recommend those for anyone. For me, it was Dr. Chafee. He was my meat pillar. Guess you could say he fed me the meat pill and got me down the rabbit hole. I just started with
Right.
his Plant Free MD podcast on episode 1, and just started listening. Just worked my way through the entire thing over like 200 plus episodes now, I think. So, and my mind was completely blown. I went all in. That's what you do when you start learning about this because it all just makes sense once you clear away all the cobwebs and the misconceptions that we've all built over our entire lives of plants being this amazing magical thing that's good for us.
No, they tried to kill me.
Yeah. So what was your highest weight during the peak of the plant period?
Well, the highest weight I've ever been in my life was, I think, 287.
And how tall are
Um,
you?
5'4".
Gotcha.
5'4". So when I left the plant diet and started carnivore, I was 266.
Okay.
And that was about 40 over a 45% body fat, so I was morbidly obese.
Hmm.
Um I did lose 100 pounds in the first 10 months.
That's
And
crazy.
I do attribute most of that to the lion diet. Um,
Gotcha.
I did lion diet for 5 months because some of my stomach issues were coming back. So I got rid of the bacon, the chicken, all dairy, including butter, and it went away. So I
Real quick,
stayed
sorry to
lion.
interrupt, but for listeners, lion diet is just beef, salt, and water. That's it. So
Yeah.
no bacon or eggs or butter. That stuff. Literally just beef, salt, and water. So that is the strictest version you can do of carnivore, true carnivore. And
Yeah.
I, I've I believe that is the most optimal human diet you can have. And it sounds like for you, you saw an even greater level of success on that one. So that certainly is a good testament.
Oh, yeah. Healing went, I mean, through the roof. I was crossing off symptoms in my journal left and right. I had never felt so good. Um, and the weight was, I was eating a lot. And I know a lot of people will say this, well, you restricted your diet even more, so you were probably eating less. No, I was not eating less. I was eating like a mad woman. And yeah, we're talking about thick ribeyes, huge, super fatty. And I would eat like 1.5 to 2 of them a day. So yeah, no, I wasn't restricting food. I wasn't restricting fat. I was eating and I was healing and I was shrinking. Uh, I I watched a couple of influencers say, well, if you have a lot of fat to lose, then you really need to cut back on your fat intake. No, no. In fact, in Dr. Berry's community, it's the people who are cutting back on their fat that are stalling and wondering
Right.
where,
Hmm.
nothing's happening. What can I be doing? And I was like, well, are you restricting food? Because you guys need to eat and eat a lot. Uh, But
I think
yeah,
it's very much just a semantic problem for a lot of people. They just think that I mean, it's kind of an unfortunate word for that material because they just think that fat makes you fat. I mean, it just
yeah.
makes sense. And who knows if that was, some conspiracy theory reason why they named it the same thing so it tries to trick people. I don't even know, but
I don't even know either, but it is the dumbest lie ever told because that's pretty much the rule that I had followed all my life. And then I just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter over the years. So when I just made the commitment to carnivore and I said, okay, I'm going to take everything I've ever learned about diet and I'm going to just toss it. And I'm going to listen to Dr. Berry. My mind is open. Educate me. So I ate all the fat, and he'll always tell people, the last 20 to 30 pounds are the hardest pounds you will ever lose, and they take the longest. So after my first initial 100 pounds, I slowed down. I still had maybe 20 to go. And I started noticing that I was craving butter. I just wanted to eat butter. And that was weird for me because I would put butter on my steak. And that's how I ate butter. I didn't eat butter. And yeah, no, at this point I wanted to just eat butter. I ate maybe a half a stick to a stick of butter a day. Another 27 pounds just flew off. And I was like, okay, so I was eating a lot of fat before, and then I upped my fat, and then so now I'm even smaller. So yeah, fat
and
doesn't make you fat.
and
Fat
that's such an
makes you
important
shrink.
yeah, and that's such an important point that I think people are doing a good job in the carnivore community of really propagating is that you're not doing yourself any favors by not eating when you're hungry on this diet. You really, because your satiety signals are actually working again, you need to follow that. Like eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full.
Yep.
It's not like carbs where there is no off switch. You just keep shoveling it in. You just get hungrier and hungrier. you're actually
Yep.
you're healing your body, so you want to give it more of those. And it's very common for people such as you coming from the complete opposite of veganism, where your body is so starving for nutrients after being so deficient for so long that there's for a lot of people they actually gain a little bit of weight in the beginning because their body needs so much. They're eating like 3 4 5 pounds of meat every day just to because their body is desperate to cling on to these nutrients. It's starving. And I know Kelly Hogan had that experience. I think Steak and Butter Gal talked about that. They're both excellent names. I'll throw those in the show notes. They had like a short period, or I think like maybe a couple months or something, where they actually gained a little bit of weight just because they were eating so much. But after that, once your body is healed, once you get that first phase of just healing your body and filling it with nutrients and waking it back up, that's when your body says, oh, okay, now I'm
Yeah.
ready to trim down. And then your weight will start falling off. For a lot of people, there's like a 2 phase journey like that. It sounds like for you, I'm not sure. Did you have that weight gain in the beginning, or was it instant weight loss?
No, it, I never gained. It wasn't instant weight loss. I did do some healing first, and that's what I've come to learn is that you're not exactly eating yourself fat. I mean, it's possible to eat yourself fat, but I think for a majority of people, health issues come first. And I think that excess fat is a symptom of dysfunction in the body. So
Agreed.
you should come into keto, ketovore, carnivore to heal. And then once your hormones start to balance and regulate, and once the inflammation is gone and your body starts to heal, it's going to let all that go. It's going to let it go. The most important thing that you can do coming into this way of eating is to focus on giving your body everything that it needs to do to heal. If you give it everything it needs, it will take care of all the rest. You don't have to get on the treadmill for 3 hours. You don't have to weight train until you pass out. I did zero exercise the first 10 months of carnivore. Zero. I didn't even walk my dog. And I lost 100 pounds. I didn't I'm serious. I averaged about 2,500 steps a day. At least that's what my Fitbit said. 2,500 to 2,700. I did zero exercise. Your body just wants to heal. If you give it everything it needs, it's going to heal, and then it's going to drop all of that weight because you're no longer sick. It has no reason whatsoever to store up all of that energy or whatever it's doing in there. I don't know what it's doing in there, but it has no reason to dysfunction or store fat if you're giving it everything it needs.
Exactly. That you couldn't have said it better myself. That's brilliantly put. And I talked to Nina Teicholz recently. She's one of my last episodes, and we talked about that a lot. How this is such a big lie that people are told is that the reason why you're fat is because you're not exercising enough, you lazy bum. Eat
Nope.
more or eat less and exercise more is the instructions everyone's given. And that's so backwards. It's
Mhm.
not the way that we're wired. Like human beings are wired to look good and feel good and not need to toil away on a treadmill all day to stay in a decent shape. You should be able to, not have to. I mean, this is another thing. A lot of human history has been kind of just hanging out. Like humans would just hang out by the campfire and tell stories. There would be like hunts every once in a while where you go and hunt, animals. So there was some exercise, but humans were pretty sedentary early in our history, like more than I think people think. Where everyone was like a super athlete running marathons all the time. Like not really. There was a lot of downtime, and people were
Yeah.
still in great shape because they were eating the proper human diet of only meat. They were just hunting the animals and eating the meat, and that was it. So they were in great shape. They had lean muscle mass, and they never had to worry about getting overweight. That's like a new modern problem we're having because we introduced plants and
Yep.
carbohydrates and sugar that are screwing up these signals that should just make you look good and feel good naturally. And another example that Dr. Chafee brings up is lions at the zoo. A lion at the zoo is not getting very much exercise. They pretty much hang out on a rock all day. But since they're being fed meat, like their actual proper diet, they're still muscular and lean. They don't get fat. You never see a fat lion, even if it's being very sedentary at the zoo, because when you get the right diet, pretty much everything works well. And of course, adding on exercise is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We can go from good to great. Like that's a good addition. But I think that diet should be viewed as that first layer of the pyramid always. And one last quick thing I wanted to inject here, which is a tweet that I saved actually because I knew this was going to come up. And I love this tweet by PD Mangan. I'm not sure if you know him, but he said yesterday, I feel bad for people who use the gym to try to burn off body fat. They've been defrauded first by the health establishment and second by the fitness industry. Using exercise to burn calories is an exercise in futility. It makes you hungry. It doesn't burn as many calories as people think. It's trivially easy to eat more than you burn. For fat loss, diet is more important than exercise by far. By far, it's like how it's better to fix the hole in a ship's hull than to pump the water out. To lose weight, you have to control your diet. And to that, I say exactly. If your goal is to lose weight, going carnivore and sitting on your butt is far more effective than doing 5,000 sets of squats a day and continuing to eat carbs. Upgrade to premium fuel and your body will trim out by default. That's really all it comes down to. And exercise is a bonus. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that because even though I didn't weight train, I didn't do any cardio or anything that first 10 months, I knew that I was putting on strength and muscle because I could carry more than 2 or 3 shopping bags in from the car. In fact, we built a coop and got chickens in month 4, and I was lifting bags of feed, bags of soil. I was lifting, these huge metal panels to build the run for the chicken. And I never would have been able to do that while I was on the plant diet. So even though I wasn't working out, I was building muscle. I was getting stronger, just doing everyday things and feeding my body protein. So, and that's what a lot of new people come in and they don't understand. They're all like, well, I'm not losing weight. The scale is not budging. And it's like, well, you're probably building muscle. If you're losing fat and building muscle at the same time, the number on the scale is not going to budge. And then people automatically freak out and think, oh my God, I'm stalled, or carnivore isn't working for me. And it's like, you have no idea what's going on in there. Do you feel better? Do you have more energy? Do you have this and that? If you do, then you're on the right track and you're doing everything right. But you don't know if you're building muscle in there. You don't know if you're losing fat in there. So just calm down.
Absolutely, and that could definitely play a part in those cases where people have a little bit of even weight gain in the beginning, or don't see like a huge drop off, is because, especially if you're starting from being overweight, having a big layer of fat on top, you can't see the muscle growing underneath and counteracting some of that weight loss. So exactly like you said, weight loss should be just a bonus. You should be thinking about healing yourself in other ways, and like the main reason why I got to it, and things will happen naturally and you'll get better and the weight will come off. Your
Yeah.
body, the human body does not want to be overweight. Once you just give it the nutrients it needs, then it will take care of everything else. Your body's an amazing machine, trust it.
Yeah.
And a
And I
big
was
part of this
fully,
whole plant-based diet is basically telling you you shouldn't trust your body. You should, do all these crazy things and not listen to what your body is telling you. You should take more supplements. You should go more raw. You should vegan harder. You should have more juicing, and just these crazy things that it's this bizarre dichotomy, because at the same time they're, a lot of them sort of base their identity about being very spiritual and connected to the earth and being kind to nature, but really you're giving the middle finger to nature because you're doing the opposite of what nature designed you to do, which is eat
yeah,
meat.
exactly.
And I assume that's probably part of your realization process too. Like we didn't really talk about the ethical side, but for you, how is that ethical transition, and how do you look at it differently now? The way that, I guess, the question would be, first of all, did you, when you were a vegan, did were you doing it for ethical reasons partly, and after you transitioned, how do you think of that differently now?
Yeah, I like to clarify and make this distinction. Went vegan slash whole food plant-based for health, not for the animals. Because if you really think about it, it doesn't matter what you eat, there's going to be death. There's going to be forest destruction. There's going to be animal death. There's going to be insects. You're going to poison the earth because, I mean, you've got to protect your crop. So you're going to poison the earth, spraying the pesticides, which is also in turn going to, kill the bugs and the animals that eat the bugs. And so I was never under the illusion that I would be saving animals if I didn't eat animals. It's impossible. Um, yeah, mine was specifically for health reasons, and because I had done pretty much everything else. I mean, so I even did Slim Fast. I That's like desperate. So it was so bad. It was so bad. But yeah, so no, it's not for ethical reasons. And I really feel for the vegans who think that they are not causing any harm by eating plants. I'm so sorry you think that way, but I can honestly tell them that I harm less animals eating carnivore than I did eating plants.
Absolutely. And that's such a that's so rare, I think, of you. That has to be a tiny percentage of the vegan community who is able to come into it and say, yeah, like this is actually killing more animals. I'm doing this for health reasons. Because most of them think that they're saving animals, but without a doubt, it decimates far more wildlife to scale up this crop agriculture. And like you said, you have to poison everything, destroy the earth, destroy all the wildlife, plow through it all with the giant machines, tear down the forests. And I just have about 2 cows a year, and that's it. And I eat a
I don't
lot.
even eat that
I'm a big
much.
guy. Yeah, like I'm like 6'1", like pretty big dude, and I eat a lot of meat. And I I don't know the exact math. It's about 2 cows a year. And when you compare that to the amount of destruction required for a salad, like salads every day for that whole time, or the fruit being flown from Argentina up to Washington State and like or all over the plant and not to mention the amount of
Yeah.
waste from plants because they mold and like go behind any grocery store and look through their dumpster. You're not going to see
Yeah.
steak in there.
Wow.
It's like mountains of plants that just go bad. And
Yeah.
on an individual level, I remember when I had not vegan, but I had quite a few plants in my diet. It was a constant battle keeping the spinach accounting maintained. And I would
Yep.
have to like time how I got it at the right times, or else it would go bad. And I would have to think about how much am I going to put in my sandwich each day and put in my pasta and my burger or whatever, because it just goes bad. And
Yeah.
you're constantly wasting food unless you're like an expert at managing all that, which is a stressor, which is a whole nother story. Um,
Yeah.
basically, a lot of words to say: stop kidding yourself. You're causing more damage to wildlife and the environment. You're causing more damage to your health, and just eat some meat. You'll feel great.
Yeah.
And if you
You will
want to
feel great.
really like be good for the environment, look into regenerative agriculture. That's a fun rabbit hole. Follow Joel Salatin, the Alan Savory. There's so many great resources out there. I'll put some in the show notes of how farms are like. Let's be clear, factory farming sucks. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Like the way that factory farming is done for a lot of meat production is awful, and we need to move away from that ASAP because regenerative farming is the complete opposite of that. It's really doing things the way that nature intended, having the cows live long, happy, wonderful lives, just grazing in the fields and having a better life than they would out in nature, that's for sure, and a very quick, painless, ethical death. And this whole process is managed much more as nature intended. And getting your beef from them, like everyone will say, like that's the best tasting beef there is. The incentives are aligned. You get a better product when you treat the animal super well their whole life and you care for them and you manage the land well. So that's what I would look into for those people because there's no doubt that the factory farm is terrible. And of course, for all these documentaries that you talked about, I've seen the Game Changers. I didn't even watch any of the other ones because I kind of figured out there was propaganda after that one. But you watch more of them and you can see they take the absolute worst of the worst imagery and they basically just stuff an entire film full of that just so it's really emotionally charged.
Yeah.
And I've heard that a lot of times it takes like years of filming because they actually have to look super hard to find animals being treated this bad in order to get their footage. It's
Yeah.
not that bad everywhere. It's like really hard to find it when it's that bad. And when it is, of course I agree that we should stop doing those things. But the
Yeah.
answer is not that we emaciate the population, starve ourselves, destroy more land for crops, and make no progress in general. Like it's just and by the way, when people get sick, that's when you're just pumping like more resources into the pharmaceutical industry. That's a whole other rabbit hole. That's just gonna be way worse for the environment and horrible for people. Just more chemicals into our supply, and it's just a mess. Just eat the freaking meat.
Oh yeah,
Essentially,
the medication is not making us any better by any means at all. Not, I
yeah.
mean, not even a little bit.
And you felt that because when you were vegan, you were taking lots more medicine, more supplements and medication on top of that. You
Yep.
because you kind of need to.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I haven't touched a single supplement or pill of any kind since I started carnivore. Haven't needed it. Feel great. Like, are you on any meds or supplements right now?
I add iodine. I haven't
Oh,
been
interesting.
like craving any seafood or anything, but
I
I
have
I
heard
put
about
like a jar.
iodine as a potential supplement, especially for women for like thyroid health. I haven't dug
Yeah.
super deep into that, but do you know, have you looked into that at all?
I did read Dr. Brownstein's book, Iodine, Why You Need It and Why You Can't Live Without It, I believe about 13 years ago. And I did do his protocol, so now I'm just taking it for maintenance, to just make sure I stay health. But I went through the detox from the protocol and all that other stuff over a decade ago. So but anybody having issues with their thyroid, I would recommend reading that book or The Iodine Crisis by Lynn Farrow, because she has Dr. Brownstein's protocol in that book as well.
Cool. Yeah, I mean the whole thyroid rabbit hole is very interesting because a lot of people are dealing with thyroid issues and they don't even know it. It's not
Yeah.
very well diagnosed for most people. It's much more common in women. And the fact that, like you said, much more women are fall victim to veganism than men do, and it combine that with the fact that they're more susceptible to thyroid problems. I think that that's going to be a
Yeah.
huge problem looking forward. So,
Well, and it's also not common knowledge how we get iodine deficient in the first place. Um, so the iodine receptors, iodine is not the only thing that goes in there. You got your halides, which are fluoride, chloride, and bromide. If you're eating bread, there's the bromide. If you're sitting on furniture, there's bromide in furniture. There's bromide in your carpet. There's bromide everywhere, and they will compete and bump out your iodine to get into those receptors. And if you're using mouthwash or fluoridated toothpaste or drinking fluoridated water, then those are going to knock your iodine right out of the receptors too and take the you don't want that.
mm,
If you're swimming in a pool that has chlorine in it, you don't have a chance. You're sitting on furniture that has a halide in it. You're swimming in pools, and you're brushing your teeth and using products that have halides in them. So
and wearing
if you're doing
polyester
all of
clothing
those
too.
things,
Hmm.
your iodine doesn't have a chance. So neither does your thyroid.
And that's a great way to sort of introduce that there's so many other, terrible things just around our environment that we need to work out. Like for me, I recently purged all of my clothes that had polyester because that's
Yeah,
like another, chemical that we have against our bodies
plastic.
all the time. We don't think about how absorbent our skin is. It's
Yeah,
really absorbent. It absorbs everything. So, like you said, with the chlorine and the polyester and the tap water, the fluoride in the tap water, that all contributes as well. So, I'm really glad you brought up the iodine point because that's one I haven't looked into yet. I'd love to dig deeper into that and see what I find because that's really important stuff. And
yeah,
especially for someone probably coming from a background of being vegan, you want to really be careful with those things that you were missing for so long and make sure that you don't take any chances because there
right.
are some cases where it takes a very extended period of time to heal those problems. So one of the things that so many vegans will be thinking right now, I'm definitely going to be sharing this with vegan friends. I think this is fantastic. Is they're going to have a lot of thoughts swishing around in their brains because they're probably relating to some of the things that you've talked about, whether or not they want to admit it. And they're thinking about what am I going to do? Because they have such a strong identity around this way of eating that turned out to be a lie in many different ways. And so they've built a really strong mental repulsiveness toward meat. They look at red meat and they just think it's the worst thing ever you could possibly touch. They can't stand it. and they're going to have a hard time really getting over that hump. So what do you recommend to those people who are, maybe interested in dipping a toe back into having nutrients and
Right.
and maybe could use a little bit of a softer intro than going 100% like you did? Because I mean that's the best for sure. If people are willing to do that, do it. But if they aren't, if they might need a little bit of a softer introduction, what do you recommend?
Um, I would definitely start off slow. If it's a mental thing for you, then really go slow. Start off with a bit of chicken or maybe even eggs first or fish, and
I've heard
then
stories of
slowly,
people just having a single egg and their brain just exploded with life.
yeah, just
So
fire
literally,
right up.
that's a great starter.
Yeah. So that's what they'll do first is they'll hit the eggs and the fish first because I think that's what is that called? Pescatarian? Pescatarian?
Yeah, yeah.
I know vegetarians will eat some cheese. So if you want to start even smaller, just start with some cheese because it's not actually an animal. The same goes for eggs. They come from an animal, but it's not technically an animal. So if you have that in your mind that you're hurting an animal, cheese and eggs are not hurting an animal. Those hens are going to pop out eggs regardless. And I know because I have 21 chickens and they just make eggs. And I don't have to do anything. Like there's no rooster in there. They just make eggs. So it's not like you're forcing the animal to do it. Um, for those that are having a health crisis, you might have to introduce a little bit more meat than you're ready for, but you have to understand that you're an animal too. And if you're not eating a proper human diet, then I'm sorry, you're harming animals. And we're animals. So you got to be kind to yourself too. So while it might not be ideal, just try to focus on how you feel. Don't just sit there and go, "Oh my God, I'm hurting animals. I'm causing pain and suffering and blah blah blah." No, you're in pain and you're suffering. Try to focus on eating your species appropriate diet. Because you don't see the antelope apologizing to the field for eating the grass. That's not how this works. And you're not going to see a lion apologizing for eating the antelope because that's what he's supposed to eat. So stop that. Stop it. I mean, really think in very simple common sense terms of what you've been fed and what you've been led to believe, and have it go through a filter and say, does that really make sense? Does it really make sense? No. Okay, so that's how you get through the mental part. Now, some people are so indoctrinated that they have physical reactions from eating the meat based on what they believe mentally. Just go very, very, very slow. Your body is going to figure it out faster than you can imagine what it's supposed to do and what it's supposed to eat, and then it'll all be behind you. It'll be all over. For anybody thinking that they need to go plant-based to get healthy, I don't recommend it at all. Like I said, I wasn't that bad off when I started the plant diet, and it went downhill really fast and could have ended up a lot worse than it did. So I was lucky. I was really lucky. If you Google what the percentage of people that leave veganism, it's like over 80%. Based on what I experienced, I think the other 15% just haven't gotten sick yet. So let that sink in.
Or they're lying,
84,
which
yeah,
is also common.
84% of people leave because they feel bad. I mean, it's just a matter of time for the other 15. So think about that. And if you don't want to take my word for it or anybody else's word for it, because if you Google why I'm no longer vegan, you're going to get thousands of videos of people who tried it and ended up worse than they were. Go ahead and try it for yourself. I don't recommend it. There's no need to go through all of that. You can just go straight into eating what humans evolved on and living your best life. But some people are stubborn, so.
And the good thing to note about that as well, like the plan of just listening to people's stories, is that very oftentimes it's our emotions that bring us into something like this, which is, I would say, probably the majority of vegans started because of some emotional reaction they had to a movie or a picture, or hearing someone's story about how they did get better because they just stopped eating like terrible like American diet and like cut out other chemicals, and so they did comparatively feel better, and so they kind of just took that at face value and used that information. um there's a lot of emotional responses involved with eating and what you put in your mouth. It's a very emotional thing. And
Yeah.
not to go too deep into the weeds here, but I actually Googled what percentage of vegans are women. It's 79%. So about 80% are women. And first of all, it drives me insane that people think that this is like some kind of like negative thing to say, that women are more emotional than men. They just are. Like
Yeah.
they're more emotionally driven. And so I think that's a big reason why, like when these, terrible pictures are played on a screen of animals being harmed, men are more logically wired, so they might think, okay, let me research this a little bit. Women are more likely to say, like, that's terrible, I don't want to be part of that, and so they just go all in from there. And I,
Yeah.
I think that, would you agree with that, first of all?
I think so, yes. I am not one of those. I tend to think more like a guy would, because when you hear the vegan arguments in videos, my first thought is, okay, it doesn't matter what you do, there's going to be death. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
That's the reality of life. No matter how you live it, there's going to be death. So yeah, they'll never get me for ethical reasons. It's never going to happen. You cannot turn me. But
No
but
Jedi
yeah,
mind
and
tricks are happening here.
right. So yeah, they'll get women with that. They also get them with, oh, well, you'll have like the most desirable feminine body. You'll stay nice and trim, and plants are low fat, and this, that, and the other thing. So I think they're being hit by more than one thing. First the emotions, and then the appeal to look your best, and you know just
Yeah,
not look unhealthy or anything.
from
So
all sides at once. It's
yeah.
constantly being bombarded. Like you can't even walk through a grocery store. I was in a grocery store recently and just looking at the magazines, kind of flipping through, and it's just all these beautiful people saying, "Oh, I ate all these plants and got super healthy," and it's just propaganda, marketing, BS. And the magazine is filled with pharmaceutical ads. I wonder if that has maybe played a part in why they want people eating plants so much. I don't know. I'm not a
I think
conspiracy
it does.
theorist, like who knows? But
I think it does. And I've even seen some videos where they said, well, men don't like it when women eat a lot of food, or eat really heavy things. And I was like, okay, that's never been my experience. I have never
men
seen a
love it
guy
when they
walk
see that. They're
away
like,
from
"Yes."
me no matter what I was eating. And then, like, we would go to Texas Roadhouse, and I would get the 20-ounce ribeye, and I cut off the bone first, and then I would pick it up and start chewing whatever I missed off the bone. My husband looks at me and he goes, okay, that's hot.
I bet every
So,
man in there was looking at you like, man, I wish that was my girl.
so men are not going to run away if you pick up a big honking piece of meat and just go to town. That's ridiculous.
I promise you, I could not agree more. And more men, as they also are going through their own like different journey of food and figuring out diet. Because I mean, there's certainly men out there that have been totally played, like I certainly was for most of my life. And as they start to come around and find carnivore as well, they're going to be seeking the meat eating women. Like, I mean, meat eaters find each other because you have to go through a journey in order to get to that point of eating the human appropriate diet, because there's so much BS out there that have indoctrinated all of us so hard that in order to get to that point, it really says a lot about a person that they just threw away all of these BS government guidelines. And it's like you said, it's hot. That's a dating tip right there. Fill your Tinder bio with steak emojis, ladies, and you're gonna up your numbers big time.
Right?
So we are getting close to 2 hours here. I want to respect your time. I
Oh,
have one last question for you. We've kind of been dancing around this a little bit, but the fact that a big part of your journey was going through those YouTube videos, as we mentioned a couple of times, listening to those stories from people, and that really helped connect the dots, as it did for myself going into carnivore. Now you're one of those people that's in the video. You've now joined the side of being on the producer of content that's going to help people. So what is your message to those people who are in your old shoes, looking for answers, trying to figure out what to do next? What is your message to them right now?
just try it. Try it for 90 days because, I've tried all kinds of ways of eating. And if I would have just thrown my hands up and given up and stopped trying, I never would have found carnivore. And I don't even want to know where I would be right now. Now, I'm not saying carnivore is perfect for you. It might be keto, it might be ketovore, but there's no way you're going to know unless you try it. So who cares if you tried 100 different ways of eating and nothing ever worked? Keep trying. I'm going to be a grandmother in April. A grandmother. Do I even look like a grandmother? I don't think I look like a grandmother.
Not at all.
Um, but I think that if I would have stayed on the plant diet, what benefit would I be for my daughter and for my grandchild if I had no energy, no strength? I'd be useless. My daughter could bring my grandchild over and say, oh, look, there's your grandmother. But I wouldn't have the strength to hold him or lift him up or run around and chase after him and actually watch him. That I would be useless. So yeah, I don't even want to think about where I would be right now. But don't give up. Don't stop looking. And like I said, it might not be carnivore, but it might be some variation of carnivore or something close to it. That could be the answer. N equals 1, you have to experiment. If it doesn't make you feel good, take it out. If it makes you feel great, keep it in, maybe add a little bit more. Just never stop trying.
And I definitely would add, what most people from my research have found to work the best if you really want to find optimal as soon as possible is to do exactly what you did, go lion diet for a period of time of strict beef, salt, and water, not even any of the sort of gray area of like dairy and eggs and things like that. Because that is the most extreme elimination diet you can do, where it's exactly what your human body is meant to digest, for sure.
Exactly.
And then add things one at a time and see what happens. I haven't actually done
Exactly.
this yet. I need to come clean. I'm working my way up to it because I'm still a newbie. I'm only a few months in myself, but at
Oh,
some
wow.
point I'm going to go strict lion diet for, probably 90 days, and then start adding things back in like eggs, cheese, dairy, butter,
Yeah,
things like that, just to see what happens. Because um, you're going to learn some interesting things about yourself, and you're
you
going to
will.
find
You will.
which things were causing you the problems that you have, and make sure you're honest with yourself and write down a list. I love how you have your giant list that you wrote of all the things. Take a starting picture. Like I saw your starting picture, and it's just crazy to see the side by side. And are you 50 years old now?
Almost.
Like, that's
I'm,
insane. You look so
yeah,
awesome, and you're about to be a grandmother, which is just wild. It's
yeah.
you had 3 kids by 26. Like, you've done so many amazing things in your life. I just think that's so cool. I really am excited for people to find this and hear your story. It's been
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure talking to you and hearing from you, and thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.